There we go. Hey guys, my name's Kelly. I'm the lifestyle engineer, and today I am really excited because I have a guest with me. This is Jake Browen. He is from the UK, so he's got that cool accent. Love it. But then Jake was an athlete and has turned coach. So Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you, how you started, and what you do now?
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, Kelly. Glad to be here. My accent isn't as good as what you've made out though.
It's great, trust me.
So my name's Jake. I am a coach. I coach people how to journal for life full of purpose and direction. Because back in the day, I was somebody who lacked that. I lacked purpose. I lacked direction. Like you said, yes, I was an athlete as well. I did represent Great Britain when I was around 21. I represent them at various different tournaments as a deaf athlete, I might add. So I'm actually deaf in both ears, just so that the listeners know. That's a big part of my story and my journey so far. So yeah, I'm a coach now, and I also run an online community for business owners, entrepreneurs, or even those people who haven't left the job yet, but are maybe looking to start things on the side, like a side hustle or a second income.
Okay, awesome. So how did you get into journaling yourself?
So I've always loved writing. From as long as I can remember being a kid, I would always be writing random stories on scrap pieces of paper. I remember being at my grandparents' house, and I would have a little corner in the bedroom where it was just for writing stories or whatever came in my head. And that is what I wanted to be when I was a teenager. I wanted to be either a journalist or I wanted to write books and stories. But I was quite impressionable when I was younger, and I had a teacher who sort of put me off. They told me, we don't think you're going to get the grades. We don't think you should go ahead and move into media and journalism. That stuck with me for a long time. It made me think, well, I'm not good enough to do that, so I shouldn't do it. But I got to a point in my life where I was at a fork in the road of, right, if I go this way, I can keep doing what I'm doing now. Or if I go this way, I can maybe start pushing myself in a different direction of personal development, doing what I love. And I'm so glad I took the second option, because the next year I decided, right, I'm going to start writing again. After all these years, I think I stopped when I was about 15. I didn't take it back up until I was about 22. And at first I just started writing my thoughts for the day, like how did my day go? What was my mood like? What good things happened that day, what bad things happened. And it just helped me so much get my thoughts down on paper. And it made me realize that once they're there, they're just solvable equations that I can work through. And from that point, I started researching writing more and the benefits to it. And what I noticed was a lot of high performing people or entrepreneurs or people that me and you probably look up to have some form of planner or journaling routine. And then from that moment on, I was hooked. I started developing my own. I started using other people's techniques. And then that's where it all started. And the results I've seen from it have been incredible.
It can be very life-changing. So first of all, you had brought up that you had this teacher that had said that, oh, you don't get the grades, so you don't recommend doing this. So how did you undo that internal programming that you absorbed? I mean, because that's like somebody said it's outside you. How did you undo the internal piece that you took in?
I think a big thing for me was talking about it with other people. So I think you are right. I did internalize that for years and years without even realizing I had done it. So for years and years, I probably walked about and thought, no, I'm not good enough to do that, so I won't do it. I've been told that by somebody in a position of authority that I'm not good enough to do that. But it wasn't until I suppose I met my now girlfriend that I sat down with her and I was like, look, I really want to do this, but I feel like I'm not good enough to do it. And we sort of spoke about it. I got things off my chest. I spoke about how years ago when I was a teenager, I was told I wasn't good enough at this. But my girlfriend sort of put it in perspective, and she was like, who says you can't do that. Who has said that you can't do that? One person. You have to do what you think is right or what you think comes naturally to you. And because of that, probably one small conversation that we had, I'm not going to say it completely undone it. I still sometimes have those days where I think, I'm not good enough, I shouldn't do this. I think that's normal. We all have those days. But it was a big first step where I just thought, yep, I can do this no matter what people say.
Okay, good. I think I would like your girlfriend. She sounds very smart. So then my next question is that you said writing it down brings it into a perspective of it's a solvable equation, which that makes my little engineer heart happy, because life is all about solving the equation. But first you have to find the right one. So does that mean that you're like going back and looking at what you've written before and kind of going, oh, wait, this is a pattern? How does that work for you?
Normally I try to deal with them straight away on the spot. So let's, for example, in my own journal, I have a brain dumping section. So I'll write down if there's something on my mind that's maybe stressing me out a little bit, that's playing on my mind, it's maybe stopping me from switching off from the evening. I will write it down and I'll ask myself the question after each point, am I in control of this situation? And if the answer is yes, I normally plan out the next step that I've got to take to move forward towards completing it or removing it completely. I write out the next step, I write out the day that I'm going to complete it and the time I'm going to complete it, just to give me that little bit more dedication towards dealing with it. If the answer is no, I just forget about it. I cross it off the list, I forget about it. There's nothing I can do to change that outcome. So I'm not going to waste my time, energy, and effort on that outcome.
Okay. So now as a person who is an overthinker, and I know this because, well, I also journal and it comes out all the time. So if you are that overthinking personality, what do you recommend for somebody to be able to let it go? Because for somebody who overthinks, that letting go piece is the hardest part.
Yeah, so what I like to do is if I have somebody who is journaling and they are overthinking, they've got a lot of things going down in that brain dumping section, is I also encourage them to come and speak to other people who are going through the same thing. That's where my sort of community and my coaching come together really quite well, is if somebody's an overthinker, sometimes they tend to think that they are the only person who thinks like that. They tend to think that they are the only person with that problem. But what you'll find is if you can go into a group of people with similar mindsets, similar jobs, similar situations, you'll find that a lot of people are or have been in the same boat, and they can talk through things and they can give you advice on how to let things go or how to forget about things. So I found the best possible way is to surround myself with like-minded people, and that works well between the community and obviously the coaching that I do at the same time.
Right. Okay. So now we're talking about the equation and you're talking about, writing down your next steps. So when you write down your next steps, is it like in a logical format, or is it just here, this is like a bunch of things that I think is going to work, and here I'm going to put these in order of where they think they're going to work this way?
Yeah, I do it that way. So I tend to think, right, what is the first step that I need to take? And I'll just write it down and I will give it time in the day. Sometimes it shouldn't be the first step, like maybe it has to be done a few steps along the line. But what I found is if I put at least one step down and I take action on it, I'll figure out the other steps pretty soon, straight after that. But I think one thing is just get started, take at least one step, and then obviously this doesn't work for everybody. It has to suit your personality as well. Some people might want to do it really logically, right? I'll start with step 1, and I'll do step 2 and then step 3. But for people with somebody with my personality traits, starting in the middle is fine, because at least I've started. I will figure out the other stuff afterwards.
So yes, the whole, you don't necessarily need to know how before you do something.
Yes.
Because you can just take a step toward it, and then I heard once, and I cannot remember who said it, but when you're talking about the how, sometimes you can only see so far. So it's like driving with your headlights in the dark. You can only see that 60 feet. Well, until you drive that 60 feet, you can't see the next 60 feet. So you
Yeah,
have to kind of just do things in order to see where you have to do next.
exactly that. And I think one of my most favorite quotes is, the worst thing you can do, or the worst type of action, is no action. The worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. Whereas if you can take at least one step, sometimes it doesn't even have to be the right step, but sometimes it's just something, normally that will lead you to the next step along the way. I mean, a perfect example is my first ever business I set up was an online website. You could go on and you could buy, or you could pay for discounts where that would take you to restaurants or bars and entertainment places.
Mhm.
And I started that for the complete wrong reasons. I went in with the thought of, right, how much money can I make from this business? Not how can I help people with this business? That's what I should have went in with. But because I started that business, I found my love of personal development, business development, mindset, high performance people, entrepreneurs, business owners. So starting that website was not necessarily the right thing to do. I didn't do it with the right intentions, but what it led me to do and what it led me to find, it did make it the right choice, if you get what I mean. Because I took that action, it led me down the path of what I would eventually do.
Okay. So how did you actually get into personal development, and that's in this space that we're in? I mean, how did that come about? Because I mean, you're saying you started this business with the wrong intentions, and that's what led to it. So what's the story behind that?
So I started that business. I started that website. At the time, I was working a job. I used to work in a sales office selling gym memberships to the general public. So somebody would come in, they would say, Jake, I want to join the gym. I'd be like, yeah, I'm your man. Pay me £25 a month and I'll get you a gym membership. So that's what I used to do. And I found myself sitting at an office desk 8 hours a day, just genuinely coasting through life, and just a little bit sick of where I've ended up. I didn't feel like I was serving a purpose to anybody, didn't feel like I was making a difference. I didn't really feel like I was working on any goals. And that's a big thing for me. The more I've read about it, the more I've wrote about it, we are goal-striving humans. It's just what we are. And if we don't have them, we begin to get that feeling of we don't really feel like we have any purpose, or we don't really feel like we're affecting anybody. So for me, I just thought, right, what do I need to do to get myself out of this situation? And I wanted to start a business. I'd always have this thing in my head that I was going to be self-employed. So I started my website. It failed so bad. It didn't make a penny. It cost me a lot of money to do. But like I said, it left me down that path of personal development, right? Who is doing what I'm doing, who I can model myself on. What books do I need to read? What parts of my mindset do I need to work on to become a better business owner? So I went down that rabbit hole of reading a lot of books. I mean, like tens and hundreds of books I must have read when I first started out. And then that sort of led me down, right, let me start writing about my own journey, my own feelings. Then I thought, right, well, I'm going to invest in a business coach, somebody who can help me. And it was probably when the website failed, I decided, right, what is my next thing? What's my next business? So I went into copywriting. Copywriting is when you write marketing material like leaflets or websites or landing pages. And I did that because I loved writing and I wanted to make a career out of it. When I got there, I realized I only liked copywriting. I didn't love it. It wasn't my passion. But it did introduce me into a world of other people who had similar interests to me, which I didn't have in my local community. And it was at that point I realized I loved talking to people who had a similar mindset to me. And it was that point I started a podcast. I started my online community. And then that is when I realized, right, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to be out here talking to people with similar mindsets like yourself, similar stories like yourself, and I'm meant to be bringing people together in that online business community.
Okay, that actually makes sense because I ended up in this space because, well, I was just looking for, I because keep in mind I was divorced at 42, 43, something
Yeah.
like that. 40, 43. I have to do the math. Sorry. And then
Mhm.
in a horrible accident and just feeling broken in every way possible and going, well, how do I even do life anymore? And it's like you when you're starting, you just devour whatever material you can find in order to try to fill that void of how do I fix me?
Yeah.
And then that kind of sometimes develops into something else. And sometimes you just come across your solution and you're like, okay, here, now I know what I need to do.
Yeah, definitely. I found that as well, Kelly. I mean, at that point when I did feel very lost and like I didn't have any purpose and that I wasn't really doing anything with my life. What had happened was I was playing football for Great Britain, football as in soccer, where you're from. I was playing football, soccer for Great Britain, and I did that for about 2 years. I trained and lived in like a professional athlete, even though I wasn't getting paid for it. And I've never been in your shoes. I've never been married, but obviously I can imagine being married is a big part of your life. And when you lose that, you think, right, well, what's next? And that was the same for me. After I played for Great Britain, I don't blame anybody for this, man. I'm completely come to terms with it. But after I played for Great Britain, there was no aftercare there. It was no, right, Jake, this is what you do next. This is the next step. This is where you go from here. It was literally, right, Jake, thank you very much. We'll see you later. And I was like, right, I've just given you 2 years of my life. So what do I do now? I've trained like a professional athlete. Oh, that's fine. We'll see you later. So I had this huge void in my life of a goal to strive towards, something to put my energy into. So what I did when I got home was I started going out on the weekends, drinking too much alcohol, buying cars that I didn't need, paying for expensive clothes that I didn't want. I was trying to fill that void in myself of having a goal to work towards. But because I was in that confused period of, well, I'll just go to work 40 hours a week. I'll get a house. I'll have the kids. I'll just do everything that is expected of me. But what happened eventually was I decided, no, I'm not going to do that because life is too short to do the things that people are asking me that I don't want to do. And that was a big moment for me, that where I had to decide, right, I'm not going to do this, what my parents think is right for me, what my friends think is right for me, what my family. I'm going to do this, what I think is right for me, and I'm going to follow my passions.
And that is probably the biggest thing that came for me from actually journaling was, going back and looking at what am I writing about? What am I actually putting out on paper? And it all came out to be that, I was so unhappy with not only with the marriage that I was in, but also my career and all the personal stuff. It was just like, okay, if I'm unhappy with everything in my life, what is actually going on? And then what do I need to do to make it so that I am happy with my life? Because I realize in the coaching space and even like Facebook memes, you always get well, you can take any negative thought and turn it into a positive. Well, okay, you probably can, but is that really the best way to do it? The best way to do it is probably just figure out what is going to actually help you, what is actually going to make you happy. And part of that is that people in general are goal oriented. So find something to work for. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, just find something that motivates you, that you want to work for, something you desire, and then do that. And you're going to find that everything else kind of falls into place. I mean, I'm probably like the most accidental coach ever. I didn't even know I was being a coach until somebody pointed it out. So it wasn't like this was like, oh, this is a conscious step. It was like, oh, wait, I can get paid to do this. I want to do this. This is a lot more fun. But still, I'm assuming that you went through something kind of similar where it was like, okay, I know that I'm unhappy, but how do I fix this?
Yeah, I definitely did. I remember my big moment was I remember coming home on a Friday evening after another 8-hour shift in an office that I hated working in. And I came home, I sat on the edge of my bed and I still had my uniform on, which was this awful black shirt and black tie and black trousers. I looked like a funeral director, and I sat on the edge. I sat on the edge of my bed, and my girlfriend came in from the bathroom, and I was just sat there, and I had tears in my eyes, and I was just sat on the edge of the bed, crying for what I thought was absolutely no reason. And my girlfriend said to me, "What's wrong?" And the only thing I could think of was, is this all there is to life? Is this all I'm here for? To work 40 hours a week, to go drinking on the weekend, for 2 weeks holiday in the summer? Is this all that I'm here for? And the answer that I could only tell myself was no. That is the first thing that came to mind. The answer is no. I am worth, or I can do more than what I'm doing now. So that was the turning point for me. So I sat there and I thought, this is not the life that I want. I want to change this. And it was then a couple of days after that point that I started journaling again. I started writing down my feelings. I thought, right, I'm going to give business a go. What can I start? Obviously, I started the wrong business at the time. It didn't do very well, but it led to what I'm doing now. So that was my big pivotal moment. Sat on the edge of my bed, crying. I thought, is this all it is to life? And I'm sure there'll be people listening and watching this who have had that moment as well.
There probably, well, I shouldn't even say probably. There are definitely people listening to this that are going, wait, that I can actually do something more. So
Yeah.
it's a matter, and again, and it's a matter of understanding who you are to understand where your hot button is. I mean, for some people, it might be a career change. For some people, it might be a personal life change. It's going to vary all over the place. But it's, that journaling piece is what kind of brings that to the surface. And then here's my big thing that I always preach on is that when you're journaling, you can't self-edit. Like if it comes to your mind, you should really write it down. Whether it makes sense where you're writing or not, it doesn't matter. If it's popping up, you should be writing that down, because those are those subconscious thoughts that are coming to the surface that kind of really clue you in on what's really going on back there. And I don't know, when you're talking to people, I'm assuming that you would tell them that, but is there like a particular lesson that you teach them to help them avoid this? Or is there a certain time of day that works best?
To avoid what, Kelly? Sorry.
The self-editing piece.
No, a little bit similar to what you've just said. I would tell them, just be as authentic as possible. Don't judge yourself. What comes out of your brain is 100% true and is 100% right. It's like you said, it is the subconscious mind just coming to the surface. You have to have that patience with yourself, and you have to be self-aware enough to know that what you're writing down is true. It is in your brain for some reason. And if you can get it out, don't judge yourself for whatever you write down. Just be happy enough that it actually came out, and that you now have a way to get those words out of your head and onto paper. Because if you weren't journaling, those thoughts, those feelings, everything that you've got swirling around will just be trapped inside of your head. And that is when we come across, obviously, things like anxiety, depression, stuff like that. These are all brought on by not being able to get things off your chest. I think I said in our initial conversation, especially men, we struggle so much with talking about our feelings, our thoughts, things that have happened during the day. And for me, having a journal as a man was a game changer. It was life-saving, because I was that man, and sometimes I still am, who walks about with thoughts and feelings stuck in my head that I want to tell people, but I feel like I can't, because as men, we are programmed that way. For whatever reason, we are. But if I can come home and get my journal and write everything down that is on my mind, I feel 100 times better. And when I'm talking to other men and I say, look, just go with it. Don't judge yourself. There's a reason that it needs to come out.
Definitely. And it also cues us in on where we're lying to ourselves, where we're not necessarily telling ourselves the absolute truth of, you hear from, probably childhood on at some point that you can't do something. Well, okay, but most things are a skill, and you can learn how to do that, whether that's pick up a book, take a class, do something in order to learn to do what you really want to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do come across a lot of people in my coaching sessions who see it, I can't do this, I can't do that. Well, the thing to do that is just, obviously it's a little bit like that Facebook meme, but it isn't I can't, it is I can. It's a little bit similar when people say, oh, I've got to go to the gym. No, you haven't got to, you get to go to the gym. If you can frame it in a different way, it's 100% possible. Like you said, if somebody tells you that you can't do something, you 100% can't. Most things, 99% of things are a skill, like journaling. Somebody says to you, why do you want to journal? Well, I want to learn how to do it. I want to learn a practice. You can do it. It is a skill. You probably got to go to somebody who has done it before and follow them, get coached off them, or you might need to buy a book and start reading about it more.
Right. And then, people also need to understand that journaling isn't necessarily just words. I mean, like mine is filled with doodles and drawings and different colors because they related to what was going on in that moment. So, I mean, if somebody's like inspired to do something else, folks, feel free. It's your journal. Do whatever you want in it, as long as whatever's inside your head is able to come out.
Yeah.
Because that's the place to put it. It's a safe space where nobody's going to judge it. So just put it all out there, because that way there you can also look at it and go, oh yeah, okay, I see what's going on now. I now have a path to fix it. I shouldn't even say fix it, but I have a path to either change it, accept it, or at least understand it so that it doesn't necessarily bleed out all over my life.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not that person who doodles and draws graphs, and I'm not a very artistic person. I like words. I like to be able to read them. But I know people who do that, and you're 100% right. Whatever you choose to do in your journal is right, and it's right for you. Because the main thing is that it's coming out and you're getting it down on paper. Then you can begin to accept it, then you can begin to work on it, then you can begin to improve it. So you are 100% right in that sense.
Okay, good. Because that's one thing I do teach people. It's like, hey, you know what? Your journal doesn't have to be all words. I mean, it helps to have some so you understand what's going on. But, a little picture with a caption, it works too. I mean, it doesn't have to be, fancy either. I mean, I am not an artist. I am not like, and this is not like something I would go out and say, look what I made. I'm so proud of it. It's just here. This was easier to do in that moment, to just get it out, because to try to describe it, it's like, oh, well, I don't necessarily have the right words. And, nothing I tried on felt right. So it's like, well, we'll try, because at least then it came out.
Yeah, and what you said before that was right as well. Like, your journal is a safe space. That's exactly what it is. Nobody has to see it. You don't have to show somebody if you don't want to. It's a private, personal thing for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that helps also with that self-editing piece of, well, if I know nobody else is going to touch it, then it's just my space, and I don't have to necessarily share anything out of it with anybody else unless I want to. I mean, there's been times where I've shown other people what's in there, but it's a select something. It's not, here's my journal.
Yeah.
Go ahead and read the whole thing. That's never going to happen. There's some crazy in there that nobody should see.
Nobody wants to see those drawings and pictures.
Yeah, there's some things in there. It's like, yeah, you probably don't want to see that, but hey, that's all right. It's all right. But I mean, it also helps. I think it also helps us understand, if we understand who we are and we're authentic with ourselves, it also helps us go out and be authentic with everybody else. I mean, if you're out there and you're just going, oh, well, there's usually like the mask that you show everybody. And I'm not saying that you have to let everything hang out, because again, there are things that I just keep private because, well, I want to.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you don't necessarily have to wear like a big heavy mask. It's here. I'm authentic, even if I'm keeping some stuff private.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know about you, Kelly, but being authentic and coming through with authenticity is something that I really struggled with at some point. I used to maybe hold back parts of my personality, whether it was on social media or in person. I don't know why I used to do that. I mean, I've journaled about it and I've asked myself those questions, but being authentic and having authenticity about yourself will attract the people that you want in your life. Now, the best way I can put it is, if you have a business and you're a personal brand, for example, so say, for example, myself, I put a lot of content out about journaling, about mindset, about online businesses. If I am not authentic on social media, I am going to attract the wrong type of person, the person I don't want to come into my business. But if I am authentic and I come across with my energy of who I really am, I'm going to attract similar people who will fit my business and will eventually become a friend, a follower, a buyer. So and that applies in everyday life as well. If you're in work, if you're down the bar, if you're whatever you're doing, if you're walking down the street and you are 100% authentic, because you are doing that, you will attract the right people.
Definitely. You got to agree with that 100%. So I want to kind of circle back on something that you said earlier, is that you were talking about men, and there's obviously a very big difference between men and women, especially the way that we're socialized. I mean, because one, there's the physical component of how we think, is that men think in less words than women do most of the time. There's also the fact that men are also socialized not to necessarily identify their emotions. And that goes from little on. I mean, I can remember times when my ex would tell my, toddlers, children, of stop crying or I'm going to give you something to cry about. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
There's a reason he's an ex. So there we go. But it's very much a social construct that men are supposed to be stoic. They're not supposed to cry. They're not supposed to have emotions. So if you've grown up in this environment, and you did too, how do you as a man overcome this? How did that work for you?
A big thing for me, and still is that I seen a photo. I can't remember where it was. It was either on Facebook or it was on some social media channel. And it was a photo of a timeline of a man's family. So it was like grandparents, parent, and then say me in the present day. And it had like your family history, and I had grandparents shouting at their child. Then I had parent shouting at their kid. And then I had me. And then it was a partition between me and the previous generation. And it was like, it is up to you to stop this tradition or to stop this occurring event. And that was a big thing for me, was I realized I don't want to be like that last generation of men that can't cry, that can't show their emotions, that can't get upset. So I want to be that generation that stops it, so that when I have kids, I can then tell them, look, it's okay to cry. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay to get upset. That was the big thing for me, is realizing that I'm in control of what the next generation gets to do if I have kids. Now, I don't have kids yet, but if I plan on having them in the future, I love the fact that I can stop what has happened 2 or 3 generations before me and introduce them to a new way of thinking that I personally believe is a better way of thinking. People might disagree, that's fine. But I personally believe that better way is to be able to teach future kids it's okay to have these emotions, it's okay to get upset, it's okay to cry. That was a big thing for me, realizing that I'm in control of that and I don't have to follow what has happened in the past.
True, you don't. I mean, all of us have that choice to make, and it's
Yeah,
very hard not to follow the programming that we received. I
yeah.
mean, because I'll admit it, as a parent, I've had moments where it's like you say something and you're like, "Oh, wait, when did my mom walk into the room?" You know, when did that happen? But I mean, for the most part, but if you make that conscious effort, you can really change the outcome for your future generations. So now, but even, not only just future generations, but today, I mean, men who are like, okay, this is how I was raised. I don't want to be this anymore. I know I need to get it out. Okay, the journal is a safe place, but still are kind of uncomfortable with it. What do you recommend that they do?
Personally, I've been to therapy, and I've said to people, it's really good to talk to professionals, because they can offer you better advice than, say, your parents or your friends can. So a big thing for me is talking to professionals. So I think people think of therapy as you only go when you've got a problem, and that is 100% not the case. You can go just to work through an issue that you feel like you've got, or something in your life that you feel like you want to work on. You don't have to go when you are to therapy when you are mentally broke. You go before the problem arises. So it's the same things, like, right, if you feel like you've got a niggle in your knee and you think, oh, that might get worse, right, I'll go and see a physiotherapist. So if you feel like you've got a niggle in your brain or something that you want to work on, why would you leave it until the point where it's about to explode? So for me, I'd like to say to people, go and see a therapist, go and speak to somebody who's a professional, and start to work on these problems and issues before they become a bigger problem and a bigger issue.
Sound advice. Would agree. Seek out therapists, seek out a qualified coach. One of the two will be able to get you through. And most coaches, if you get out of their depth of expertise, they're going to say, hey, guess what? This is beyond what I know how to do. Here's
Yeah.
a list of qualified therapists that you can call. That's usually a good sign of a good coach who knows their limitations, because we are not therapists. That is definitely true. I think that was kind of the end of my questions. I don't know. Do you have any last things?
I don't know, no, not to be honest. But again, maybe circle back to the men thing, because I'm really passionate about that. I do think it is changing a little bit. I can see more men my age, not a lot, but more, sort of coming around to the idea of, yes, I do have emotions. I should be able to embrace them, and I should be able to show them anywhere I want. I am seeing a little bit of a change. I don't know what it's like where you are. Have you seen that?
Yes, actually I have. I mean, so like my children are kind of like opposite dichotomies. So I have a 23-year-old and a 19-year-old. So my 23-year-old is much more in tune with what he feels, his emotions, and is very expressive and can talk about them, and is pretty actually emotionally intelligent when it comes to other people. And then you've got my 19-year-old son, who is very rigid, very stoic, very much more like my ex than my oldest. But he is not as emotionally intelligent when it comes to discussing other people. And he's like, well, you just shouldn't feel that. And it's like, okay, try to gently steer him to that's being dismissive. You really shouldn't dismiss what somebody else feels. Whether I'll ever get there with them, I don't know. But so you can see that it's changing, and it is a difference of, how it also depends on how you receive these things, that I think has made a difference too, where my youngest was very much, much more involved with my ex, was very much more close to him. So you can see that he took what my ex said more in tune with, instead of what I said. My oldest son, much more like me, it was just an easier relationship. So he absorb more of the stuff that I was like, well, you might want to think this way, or you might want to think about this and kind of make up your own mind kind of deal. I also have that with my fiance, who is younger than I am, where he is very, again, emotionally intelligent, very in tune with it. The first time I saw him cry, I'm like, are you crying? Are you okay? What do I do? But it's like, oh, okay. I mean, and the first initial reaction is, are you supposed to do that? And then it's like, wait, okay, yes, you're supposed to, you're human. But it was such an unusual thing that I've seen, that it was like, oh, okay, well, this is kind of cool. A guy who is in touch with his emotions and understands them, and then understands it when I have them too, is so different from most of the relationships I've experienced. So, I mean, I think that the change is out there, but I think it's also going to be slow going, that a lot of people are still, that men are stoic and they're,
Yeah.
they're strong and they're doers and they don't feel, and which is totally not true. Not to say that you're not doers, but it just is not true that you don't feel.
Yeah, you're completely right, and it is weird, isn't it, when you do see a man cry and show emotion, you think, you shouldn't be doing that, but then you almost have to catch yourself on and think, no, that's fine. You are a human.
Yeah.
You're allowed to do that. But for whatever reason, society has dictated that maybe you shouldn't, as a man, do that.
Right. And I don't know. I read someplace, and again, I don't remember where. That's the whole traumatic brain injury thing. Memory. I remember like the key pieces, but I could not tell you where they come from. But anyway, it's that your first reaction is what you're conditioned to think, and then your second reaction is what you actually feel inside. So if we stop reacting on our first instinct is not necessarily the correct one, stop and think about it. Which one do I actually want to act upon?
Yeah,
Because that is the one that's going to give you your actual path forward, which
yeah,
I think that was just very profound voice that I didn't even realize I had.
yeah. Bringing out wisdom.
So, all right. So, Jake, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, wanted to know more about journaling, wanted to know more about, how do I go about with the mindset for even business, any of that stuff, where are they going to find you or find out more about you?
You can find me on Instagram. It's just my name, Jake Rowan. Rowan spelled ROWEN. And I have my own personal branding website, which is www.jakerowan.co.uk. If you go on there, you'll be able to see my own journal that I've put together. You'll be able to see my online business community as well. And if anybody has any questions at all, feel free to direct message me, text me, email me, whatever you want. My inboxes are always open.
All right. Thanks, Jake. So everybody, thank Jake for being here today. We really do appreciate your time. I think we did actually cover quite a bit, a lot of insights. It was wonderful. So once again, guys, I'm Kelly. I'm a lifestyle engineer. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Kelly.